quilting friends, welcome back to my sewing room. It might be dark now, but a few days ago we had lots of sunshine, and I think it was possibly one of the first really sunny days where we felt that winter was coming to an end here in the north of the UK, and it inspired me to get out some sunny looking fabrics and make this cute little bag. So it's a small, I call it a Boston bag, I don't know if it is or not. You don't need to make it patchwork, you can just use one fabric. I didn't have enough of any one of these fabrics, so I just quilted them into a piece of fabric first and then made the bag. It might look a little bit complicated, but it's not. It's actually quite easy. And in this video, I go through every step. I got these nice craft cottons on a recent trip to Cambridge and went to a nice craft centre and picked up these. I've used them for various things and I've got these leftovers. I want to make a Boston bag. I would have done it in one of them, probably this one. I won't quite have enough. So I've got 3 of similar designs. So I'm going to mix these and make a sort of patchwork bag. So I hope you enjoy the project. What I'm going to do is, actually without measuring, I am just going to cut them into strips, probably quite fat ones. And alternate the 3 designs. Not quite sure how much I'm going to need. And I want the strips to be not all the same lengths, so I want to make sure I use up the bits, these sort of side bits as well. So maybe that one can make up a strip to go with that one. So it's the 3rd week of February here in the UK, the north of UK, and today almost feels like spring. We've had some absolutely horrible weather, not necessarily really cold, probably down to about -2 or 3, but a lot of days where it was not much of a freezing, throwing it down with rain or sleet. Lots of wind. And today we've got a nice still day and we've actually got some sunshine. I don't know if you can tell, but a bit of sunshine shining in on the sewing room. So I've made another one of these bags with wavy quilting, and the wavy quilting is a bit of a technique, you know, to learn one day if you just want to have a go at it. If you just want to make a bag, then you can just follow this pattern and you can follow what I'm doing, and you can do something like this with simple patchwork. You could do it in squares if you want, or a mixture, like scrappy quilting, whatever you've got really. Or you could use a piece of, I'm going to fuse this once I've done it to a piece of fusible fleece. You could also just use a bit of leftover batting, or alternatively you could just use a furnishing weight cotton. I've got another bag I made using scraps of wool like this, and that, or you could use the curtain material or something like that, in which case you probably wouldn't need to quilt it. It depends how firm you want the bag to be. I quite like it when they sit up in a shape on their own, and aren't floppy. So it's just a case of personal preference really. So that's my piece of patchwork fabric finished. So you don't have to use patchwork fabric. You could use anything you wanted, piece of corduroy, piece of curtain material, something like this, something like this. That's sort of curtain weight. But I just happened to want to use these up and didn't quite have enough of each one, so I patchworked them together. Now in terms of what to quilt it with, you can use fusible fleece like this. So this is, I'm not advertising, but it is by Lesseline H630. So fairly thin actually. There's also an H640 I think. So fairly thin. Can you see how that is? So it's got some weight to it, some fluffiness, but not a lot. Or I'm actually going to use this, which is Thermolam, and it happens to be exactly the right size, and it's just a leftover I've got. Now Thermolam is, if you go into a sewing shop and you see a wadding that looks like children's craft felt, but is perhaps a bit more floppy, and it's definitely got some warmth to it and a bit softer, I would say. But if it reminds you of children's craft felt, that's Thermolam. And so it's not fused. So I'm just going to sandwich this with my lining fabric and then quilt it. So the way to make the fabric, basically to make the bag, is you get your top fabric, you get your filling, and then you get your lining fabric, and you sandwich them together as though it's a quilt. Then you quilt it if you're going to quilt it, and then you make the bag. So that's my next step. So I've got the quilt sandwich effectively made. I've got the piece of patchwork fabric on the top, got the thermolam inside and pinned it all together, and on the back is this pink quilting cotton. I bought it to finish off my Scrappy log cabin quilt, and so got a bit left, and so I've decided to use that as the lining. If you've watched my bag tutorials before, you'll know that I really don't like plain bag linings. I think if you've made an effort with the top, the outside, then you need something nice on the inside. Quite often if you buy a bag, it doesn't really matter what the bag's made from or how expensive it is. Not that I'm in the habit of buying expensive bags, I actually never buy them at all. But often they've got a really boring, plain lining, and I just think it spoils the bag. And I think when you look in your bag, and you're looking for whatever it is you want to get out of your bag, you should see something nice. And also it should be light coloured, because it enables you to see into your bag better. So I'm not compromising on that. Don't scrimp on your lining. So what I'm doing now is quilting just outside of the join lines for the patchwork. I quite like that effect. I've got my yellow Aurifil quilting cotton on top, and the sun's shining, so I'm very happy. Got a bit off there. Well, never mind. Concentrating. Go back. Do it again. Should be there. So the next thing to do is to pin the binding to the ends of your piece of quilted patchwork. Now I've got a join in mind, that's because I'm using that fabric. But you don't necessarily need to do that. I didn't have an awful lot that would go with these fabrics. The next thing to do is to turn that under and clip it down. And then I hand stitch along here because I find that's the easiest way to get a good finish without it showing on the right side. So then do that the other side as well. I've just got ordinary cotton matching the binding, and I've got it doubled over. I'm just doing the smallest stitches I can. So the next thing to do is to prepare the zip and then attach it to the bag. So I recommend that you put tabs on the end of your zip. And this is so that you're eventually going to be sewing through the end of the bag like this, and you're going to have the binding, the bag, another layer of the bag, the zip. So if you add to that the thickness of the zip tab as well as doing all of that, you're going to be trying to sew through the end of a zip. It's quite a lot. So there's another tutorial that I've done on how to do zip tabs so that you've got no zip fabric in the end. So I'll link that in the description. I recommend you follow that. So turn your bag inside out so that you've got your two bound ends here like this, and then match them up, doesn't matter where they are at the moment, and just put the bag prepared zip on them. Make sure you've got an equal amount of tab showing, and then pin it in place, going through the two sides but not that side. Meet up your two bound edges, and pin that in place like this, and then get some more pins and just pin the zip in place. Now, just a word about the zip I'm using. I've cut this off a roll of bag zip, so that's a bag zip, but it's on a roll. You can just buy a bag zip. And they have a wider tape than, say, for instance, a dress zip, so that you've got a bit more to play with. So I highly recommend trying to get hold of a bag zip. They're also a bit stronger, and another advantage of them is that rather than having a normal zip pull, they will have a zip pull with a hole in, which I'll show you in a minute. And that means that when you finished your bag, you can put, a little strip of fabric in, or, a zip pull you've bought, or a bag charm, or something that will make the zip easier to open and just finish off your bag. So I'm going to finish this with a homemade bag charm. And if you want to make one of these bags yourself, You can download my pattern off the my Etsy page, and in the pattern it also shows you how to make the bag charm, which you can make with scraps left over from making the main part of the bag. So can you see that I'm just pinning this so that the teeth are just peeping out? And this is because I don't want the top of the bag to feel rough. You'll only really feel the binding. I'll show you in a minute when I turn it around the right way. And in fact, if you're doing this yourself, it's a good idea to check this before you actually start sewing. So that's how it's going to look. Another thing to check before you pin it, before you sew it, is that it will shut and it will open, which it does. So now this is another little bit of the hand sewing. So they're all pinned in place now. So what I will do now is get some cotton and hand sew down here and down here. And this is a stage that you shouldn't rush. So I'll move away from the sewing machine, find somewhere comfortable to sit, get a nice cup of tea or glass of something nice, and just slowly sew it with the smallest possible stitches you can do. I'm hoping you can see that as I stitch this, I've got an ordinary polyester thread and I've doubled it over, and I'm just going so that if you think that the binding is hand stitched on this side to the lining, you're now going to hand stitch the zip to the binding. What I do is I try and go through the lining, the binding and the zip tape. You've got double thread, and if you keep your stitches very small, I don't necessarily mean very small, but very close together, you will have a very secure seam. So now that the zip is in, the next thing to do is to mark the halfway point of the bag like this at both ends. And then line it up so that the middle of the tab is over the halfway point, and pin that in place. Do the same at the other end. Sure that the halfway point of the tab is over the halfway point of the bag. Just pin that for now. And then one thing I did forget was making the tabs. I'm just going to use a piece of this wool. So because this is wool and it's not going to fray, I'm also going to edge it with pinking shears. I don't need to hem it. So I'm folding those in half and then putting those in place there. So before we do another row of stitching, I'll just turn this around the right way and inspect the seams. Now they're all okay. Check that your tab's all right. Now you can see the benefit there of having the zip tab, because you've got that neat end there. You can't see it very much. If you wanted to, you could do that tab in a completely different colour and have like a bright pink now or bright orange or something, but I just use the same fabric. But what that gives you is a very secure finish there, and the tab is in the middle as well. So once you've checked it, you can go over the stitching once more. So the next stage of the bag making is to box the edges, and this is what gives you the shape of the bag, what I would call the Boston bag shape of the bag. So there's a principal pattern for this bag, and I just cut out the triangle. So fold the bag flat, so you're going to be boxing the corners as though it was a normal bag. Note that the zip is here, there, and then you fold this, so you're going to box the bag in a normal way, so that the stitch line is down the middle there. And then get your template and line it up so that the dotted line is on the seam line like that, and then get your pencil and just draw that line in like that. So basically it's a bit like when you box a bag normally, but you're tilting it towards the zip, towards the top. So then get a pin, put that in on that line. These corsage pins aren't working. Just put that in there to keep that secure, and do that with the other four corners. So if you're using the principal pattern, you need to flip the triangle over for these ones. What you can do is just draw the line in on the other side. You can see it through it like that. And then just make sure that your line is on pretty much on the stitch line. Draw that line in like that and put your pin in. And do that at the other end. So fold the bag like that, so that not the end of the fabric but the stitch line is in the middle there. And then always have it so that the zip's at the top. Put that on the stitch line. Draw your line in. Like that. Put a pin in. And then the last one. Again, make it so that the stitch line is in the middle, not the end of the fabric. Get your template piece, put that there, draw your line, put a pin in. Now, what I suggest you do is stitch these lines on the sewing machine, but only stitch one single stitch and don't backstitch So in that way you can actually check to see if the bag looks okay before you finish off the seam. Now before you cut anything, just turn the bag around the right way. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Here's the finished bag. I added some PVC handles and made fabric bag charm. There's a video on how to do this linked in the description. If you do decide to make one, I hope I've inspired you, and I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with another project.